Hello, hello, hello. I believe this is episode 183. God. And today we have John Borland on the podcast. And I was introduced to this guy from a previous guest. And I've got to say, John absolutely blew me away. Who is John? Well, obviously, he's not a footballer anymore, but he used to be a footballer. That's a thing that stood out to me, first of all. He used to be a footballer. Wow. But he's so much more than that. He's so deep. He's a thinker. I genuinely enjoyed talking to John, and it was an amazing chat. And I'm sure that every single person, I've got a bucket load of notes somewhere around here. I've just finished talking to him. I've got a bucket load of notes for the absolute gold that he gives away, and I recommend his podcast to every single person. Normally, when I do these shows, when I interview someone, I try and learn as much as I possibly can about that person. And more often than not, I go down the rabbit hole. But on this rabbit hole, I got up at 5 a.m. this morning, and all I did was go for a walk and listen to John. That's it. Because I found it so engaging, so interesting. And there's going to be, I promise you, there is going to be so many more daily podcasts about what John says. Because there's a Lego analogy that he says in one of his podcasts. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so good. And so anyway, stop talking, Dean, shut up and get on to John. John is an amazing guest. I'm sure that he's going to tell you exactly what he does. I know that you guys will absolutely geek out on this as much as I did. The biggest compliment I can give John is that I had a list of questions to ask. Like I do every guest, I research, probably too much research, if I'm honest. And I just ended up chatting with him. I ended up chatting and talking and talk. It was brilliant. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it as clearly as much as I did. And here's John. Anyway, without any further ado, I don't even know what I'm saying. Right, here's John. See you later. Bye. Welcome, John Borland, to the podcast. John, thank you so much for your time, buddy. I really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Oh, great, Dean. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, we've literally been talking for like 15, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden I said, John, I'm going to have to press record, buddy, because, we're talking away. I'm thinking, I ain't even pressed record yet. So, yeah, I appreciate your time, pal, and great to finally talk to you.
No problems. Thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to this, mate.
No problem. So, John, if you could tell the listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and give us a glimpse of your personal life, buddy, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, so where do I start in terms of describing myself? There's a few different titles and labels people want to give me. So I suppose I'm a podcaster, an author, a coach. I do a bit of speaking. I train people, etc., etc. But I'm also a husband and a dad and all those kind of other things as well. So basically, my whole thing in terms of my work life is all about helping people to develop, to grow, to improve themselves, just to kind of be free from the stuff that holds them back as well. So that's kind of my whole thing. But I suppose I have this weird mix because my work life and my personal life just merge massively. Do you know, like I don't have this real defining line between that's work and that's home life. They kind of merge. And I know for some people that would be their worst nightmare, but for me, that works really well. One of my mates summed it up actually. Just before lockdown, we were out on a night out in our hometown over in Lancashire. And one of my mates who I've seen for years said to me, do you know what it looks like, mate? It looks like you get paid to be yourself. He's like, that is unbelievable. And I was like, yeah, you're absolutely bang on, mate. That is effectively how it feels. I get paid just to be me and to do what I do. So it's an interesting mix that I've kind of got going on.
It sounds busy as well. And don't forget, you used to be a footballer.
Yeah, this is the bit that everyone loves to talk to me about, the football bit. But it's the bit that I kind of I not forget about because it was a defining moment. But that is where I started. Yeah, I left. My whole childhood was dreaming of being a footballer, mate. And I left school and I went off to like a local pro team and ended up signing a pro contract, played in the first team for a handful of games, etc., etc. But it very quickly went pretty sour. And the dream was over, and I had to kind of look at life in my early 20s and go, right, what do I do now? I could still keep playing. I played like semi-pro football, so I was still getting paid for it, but not enough to make my way in the world. So I had to really figure out, what do I want to do now? And then I'd just been on this mad journey, really, just figuring it all out. And in some ways, I think it's a massive blessing that I was that young when that football career kind of ended, because then I was really able to figure out, right, what are you really good at, mate, here? What do you really want to do? Because I think I'd been very, because you have to be with this, I'd been very blinkered, one track kind of minded. There was nothing else existed for me really other than football. Everything was geared towards it. And then not being a professional anymore, it was literally like the world opened up for me.
Yeah.
It was like, well, what are you going to do now when I could do anything? And I'd never thought like that before, because all I'd ever been focused on was that one thing.
So how did it go from being a professional footballer, being dedicated to that craft and wanting to be a professional footballer, to all of a sudden thinking, do you know what the hell do I do? And all of a sudden the rest of your life opens up and you don't really have a pathway. How did you find that path?
To be honest, it probably started with a period of grief. It probably started with mourning. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I think it was a few weeks and months of almost going, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. What has gone on here? I mean, all the indicators were that I was going to have a very long and successful professional career. I was expecting to play football till I was 35, and there I was at 20, 21 years old thinking, what do I do now? So it started with a period of grief. And then I suppose I sort of accidentally went off to university because my mate's dad, his son was also an apprentice footballer. So he kind of got into youth team level. So he probably knew this process a little bit. He rung me up and said, look, mate, there's this course. It's in youth work. I think you'd be really good at this. Come and have a look at it. So I went to have a look and accidentally kind of went to university. There was no plan. Went to there, met another guy who was running a youth project in the inner cities. He said, you're going to be brilliant working with kind of, in areas of high crime levels, high unemployment, high antisocial behavior. I think you're going to be brilliant. Come and have a look at it. So I did. And then that's what I kind of ended up doing. I ended up, I lived in a flat above a community centre in inner city Bradford, working with young people and families in what was considered one of the most deprived communities in Britain. So that was a right learning curve into like just being human and connection and people's psyche and culture and all that kind of stuff. It was amazing. It was tough, but it was amazing as well. And that kind of then led me into the whole kind of coaching world, really. That's kind of where it all... So this has kind of been an evolving process for me. And I feel like I want to say I've stumbled upon things, but I think I've noticed things and been curious and gone, oh, let me have a look at that, and found things that really suit me and fit me, really.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I've listened to so many of your podcasts because as soon as I knew you was coming on the show, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to start listening to his podcast and go learn a little bit. Like I do with every single guest, I try to make sure that I understand a little bit about them, and so just enough to hold a conversation. And then every single episode that you do, whether it's talking about the outdoors with somebody else or with Phil Scare talking about identity, for me, it gives me, it makes me think, and it makes me start asking questions about myself. And for one example, it's about identity. When you mentioned about your identity being a footballer, I mentioned pre-chat that my identity previous was the betting guy, but then you also talk about identity with material things. And if I'm honest with everybody and vulnerable, do you know what? I think I do suffer from that. I think I do suffer from, because I used to drive a van for 5 years and I couldn't wait to get a car. And when I got a car, I was real proud of it. And so my identity, I do believe, is always connected to something externally. And I do maybe think that's maybe a confidence issue, and people are like, what, you do a podcast, of course you're confident. But ultimately, deep down, maybe I'm not. What would you say to somebody who maybe suffers with confidence issues and identity then?
Well, two things here. I think there's a big difference between confidence and self-esteem. And I think they're often used interchangeably. So people often say, I'm struggling with my confidence. And what they mean is I'm struggling with my self-esteem. And some people say I've got no self-esteem, but what they mean is confidence. So my take on this, and obviously there'll be different opinions on it, but my take on it is that confidence is how much you believe in your ability to be able to go and do something, like perform an action, something external. And self-esteem is how much you love yourself, like on the inside. So how much do you actually like yourself, rate yourself? Because it comes from like self-estimate, doesn't it? So self-esteem, that's where we get the words from. And I think that those two things can be connected, but I think they're also not related as well, in the sense that I think the celebrity world shows us this. There's loads of people who are highly confident in their ability to go and sing in front of an audience, to perform as an actor, to go and play sport at a top level. But if you start to talk to them, you'd probably discover they don't like themselves that much. So they're lacking in self-esteem. And actually at the same time, I think you can have high self-esteem, but you haven't got particular confidence in a certain area. So when people, I don't know, maybe hear me talk or see me do a podcast, they'll go, oh, you're really confident. You're such a confident person. And I'm like, no. I'm only confident in the areas that I know I can do well. People who saw me skiing for the first time, I went skiing, right, for the first time. I was absolutely crap, mate, like rubbish. I thought I'd be good because I'm like, oh, I'm sporty. I was probably a bit cocky, but I was rubbish at it, right? And when I was crying on a mountain, shouting, get mountain rescue, and I've got kids from the ski school, like skiing past me, nobody skis past me and goes, oh, there's a confident guy. I don't look confident at all because I'm not doing something that I have any belief in that that I'm good at and I can do. So your confidence, I think, can go up and down depending on the circumstances. Your self-esteem's a much more of a steady progress. So it can be grown and it can be lowered, but over longer periods of time. So like, I don't know, if I said to you, Dean, like, how confident are you can tie your shoelace? You'd probably be 100% confident. I don't know whether you can fly planes, but if I was like, how confident are you can land an airplane? Probably. Can you fly planes?
No, absolutely not. I'm terrified of flying. I hate it.
Right. So probably your confidence would be really low, but that's about what you're doing. Whereas self-esteem is much more about who you are on the inside. And I think, and I might be wrong, I don't know this, but often I think that the possessions thing, the materialistic approach to stuff, is a way to boost self-esteem. So I think it's a way of people going, I'll have that and I'll have that and I'll have that, because that makes me feel better about me.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite a short-lived thing, because getting that thing, we suddenly get used to having that thing. It's no big deal anymore, is it? Do you know, what was once your dream car is now just your normal car. What was once your dream house becomes your normal house. Do you know, like, so it's, all that stuff becomes no. So I think it's a short-lived way of kind of working with self-esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I had this conversation with my wife about HD telly and standard definition. I said, what's the point of a HD telly? Because you don't appreciate it after a while. What's the point of a big 65 kick-ass inch, television? But all of a sudden it just becomes normal. So you don't appreciate it anymore. You just like you won't appreciate a 42 inch or a 22 inch. So what's the difference? There's no difference. And it's only the way we perceive things for that short amount of time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it doesn't last. That's the thing. And that's the problem with possessions. They do give us a little bit of a boost. They do. You get something now. And there's nothing wrong with like having stuff. For me, it's all about how attached to you are, to that stuff are you. And if you lost that stuff, how much would it affect you or not affect you? And for me, it wouldn't be a big deal. Do you know, like if somebody bumps into my car, I'm more like, oh, what an hassle this is now to have to sort out the paperwork. It's not about the car. I couldn't really care less, to be perfectly honest. It's not that big a deal, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas for some people that would be huge. It's almost like their own identity has been sort of bashed into, do you know, in that sense. Yeah. So I think there's some work for people just to kind of think through around how attached are you to possessions? What are they really doing for you? How much does that mean? What if you lost all those things? Because I think there's something liberating and freeing from that as well, when it's not that big a deal for you. Like I appreciate stuff. I've got nice things and I appreciate them. I look after them, but I'm not attached to them. I don't need those things. Do you know, as long as I've got the basics, like clothes on my back and food in my fridge and stuff like that, I'm good to go. I'm happy as Larry.
So how do people improve the self-esteem then? If they wanted to, if obviously materialistic things isn't sustainable and it's only a short-term high, what would you suggest then people, how would people improve their self-esteem?
So this sounds really weird, but I think obviously I used to believe that self-esteem was built in people through positivity, praise, achievement, encouragement, all those kind of things. And I do think they play their part, definitely. But I actually think being listened to is probably the biggest thing. So I think when we're listened to and truly understood by another person, that starts to build our self-esteem. A guy called Nick Luxmore wrote about this in a book called Feeling Like Crap. It's all about young people and the meaning of self-esteem. And he wrote about the idea that when we're being really listened to, when we're really connected with another person and we're being really understood, that boosts our self-esteem in the same way that when a baby's born and their caregivers kind of look into its eyes and really kind of start to pay it attention, as the baby's growing, what it starts to recognize is that I'm worthy of your time and attention, and therefore self-esteem starts to grow within it. And he says that kind of level of being listened to by another person and connected to another person in life mirrors that same process. So self-esteem starts to grow in that way. But I also think then the one thing we need to do is start to really listen to ourselves and really start to understand ourselves. And one of the greatest things I think you can do is start to listen to your own inner critic. Because it's very difficult to wander around all day, basically slagging yourself off constantly, telling yourself you're crap, you can't do it, you're rubbish, you're not good enough, you're not as good as everyone else, and then feel good about yourself. It just doesn't happen. And I often say this to people, if a real life person was following you around all day, literally going, you're crap, you don't know what you're doing, nobody's listening to you, why are you even bothering, you're going to make a fool of yourself. How long would it take you before you told them to like do one, get lost, punched them in the face, I don't know, just got them away from you? It wouldn't take that long, I don't think. I think you'd put up with a few minutes of that before you'd be like, get lost. But loads of people are walking around all day, every day with that inner critic just constantly slagging them off. And then they're thinking, well, why don't I feel any good about myself? Why is my self-esteem no good? So I think that's the other thing, is that inner critic. If you can start to quieten that inner critic, push it aside, start to ask. I often talk to children about this as well. When I've done talks for kids, I often talk about having a cheerleader inside you as well.
Yeah.
You've got this voice inside you, a cheerleader that's telling you, you've got this. It's okay. You can handle this. There's no problems here. You're doing well. Keep going, mate. Do you know what that? And if you're listening to that all day, you go to bed at night feeling quite good about yourself, feeling okay with the world. If you go to bed at night having just heard your inner critic all day, it's horrendous. So I think there's a few things. One's about connection with other people, definitely. But one's also about that awareness of that voice that you have in you. Because when we talk about voices in heads, people suddenly get all like, oh, my life, there's nothing wrong with me. And we're not saying there is. We've all got this self-talk, these inner voices in our head. And if you can be aware of it and notice how negative is yours, how positive is yours, if it's imbalanced, can you start to shift it? And it can be done. I've seen people do it. Loads of people that I've worked with start to shift this voice that they're kind of, this negative voice that's holding them back and lowering their self-esteem.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because I always say to my kids, I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I'm quite conscious and aware that I want to make sure that they're, because I think the biggest gift we can give our kids is just to be confident and love themselves. And so just yesterday was on the way back from Primrose Valley in the caravan, and he was saying, I can't do this. And I'm crap at this. And I said, buddy, you're not crap at this. You just haven't practiced. All you got to say is, I can't do this yet. You can't do this yet. And the only reason you can't do this now is because you haven't practiced enough. If you practice enough, then that yet will become, I can do this. And so you never, ever want to complete a negative sentence in your head. You always want to put a yet on the end. And I've actually done a podcast episode on this when you said about the inner critic. I've said myself that you've got to be completely aware, and you've got to catch yourself when you are being negative about yourself, because just like you said, if you follow yourself around every single day talking about yourself in that way, you don't talk to your worst enemy that way. So why would you ever talk to yourself that way? So I think it's so important that we do catch ourselves when we get into that negative mindset, and we don't allow it to progress any further. So John, what do you love about coaching? What do you enjoy most about it?
Oh, mate, I love the development. I love the freedom that people find. I love the connection. There's so much about it. But mainly for me, my buzz, my kind of treasure is seeing people grow and develop, get more connected with who they really are as well. Yeah. So I'm a massive fan of connection. And it's that connection with self that's the big one for me. That's what I love seeing in my coaching room, is when people suddenly start to discover who they actually are rather than who they've been told they are. And they start to be able to separate those messages from what the world's been saying, and culture and their upbringing and their conditioning. And they actually start to get to know themselves. Now, that sounds weird because we think we know ourselves, but so many of us don't, because we're just products of our upbringing, products of our culture. We've never really looked at it or thought it through. And what's often happening is so many people who come into my coaching room to start with are almost trying to live out somebody else's version of their life. So they're trying to live up to the expectations of society or parents or job or their role, or just, the stuff they've gathered. And it's just, you talk about self-esteem. And actually, I think the other thing we've got to do is understand that a lot of our culture is set up to lower our self-esteem. So we're constantly being marketed at by companies that are saying to us, you're not actually good enough unless you buy this product. You're not quite up to scratch with everyone else unless you have this in your life. Yeah. And it's a clever way of marketing, because our egos then go, oh, no, I need it. Right, let me get it. Then I'll feel better about myself. And then they tell us we need the next thing and the next thing and the next. This is why there's so many flipping updates and latest versions of stuff, when actually I'm like, this one I've got's really all right. But so why do I need this new one? It doesn't do that much different, but it's that constant telling you you're not quite good enough. So I think there's also that as well. And I just love that realization that people in my coaching room have when they're able to start to separate who they really are from who they've been told they are or conditioned to be. And I love that freedom. And that's where I see people start to really flourish then, because they start to make their own decisions, own choices, set their own goals for themselves. Because so many people come in and talk to me and say they've got a goal for their life. And then when we start to really talk about it, they realize it's not their goal, it's somebody else's goal. It's how they think they should be. Rather than what they really want. So it's interesting. But I could talk about coaching all day, mate. There's loads of stuff that I just love about what it does for people and how it works.
John, your face, honestly, when I said about coaching, what you love about coaching, your face just absolutely lit up. I was like, holy shit, this guy really loves coaching. You can just tell straight away. And then you were so passionate about helping people and transformation. I just thought, you can tell, because anybody who's that passionate about what they do, it must be fantastic for you to get out of bed and do that every day and have an impact and see the impact, actually see somebody progress, going from where there was when you first saw them to where they will be at the end. I think that's an incredible blessing.
Yeah, and the thing is, actually, it's weird when I say this, but it's not coaching that I actually love, because coaching is kind of like the tool. What I actually love is the people and the way it works for them, and what it does. So I love the results of coaching. Yeah. Coaching's just the tool for me, and it's the one that suits me the best. And I don't think it's any better or worse than, other things that people use. It's just the one that works for me. It's the one that I find fits really well with me, suits who I am. When I came across coaching, it was a proper like hand in glove moment where I was like, this proper works for me. So it's the results of it that I love. It's the development that I see in people. It's that freedom. I just love it. I absolutely love it, mate. When people have light bulb moments, when they kind of move forward with something, when you can look back over 6 months and go, oh my life, look how far you've grown. That's the stuff I love. Yeah.
Is there any area of coaching that you specialize in then?
No. And this is really interesting because everything in the coaching world says niche. You need to have a niche. You need to be. But if I'm honest, working with people is working with people. So I honestly believe I could coach anybody, anywhere, about anything, if they're willing to engage with the process. Yeah. Because ultimately in coaching, I'm not the expert on their life. They're the expert. So I don't need to be an expert in a certain area. All I need to be able to do is be with people, connect with people, be really curious, listen really well, be brave enough to ask the questions that nobody else is asking, and be with them while they work through their own answers and their own solutions to it. So no, I'd like to say, I've got this amazing niche and I'm definitely for these people, because that would help me from a marketing business point of view, but it's just not true. So I can't pretend. The reality is, I've spent a lot of time working originally in schools and, with people in education, and we worked a bit in the public sector and the third sector. And now we do quite a lot of work in the corporate world. But all that shows me is wherever people are, I think coaching can be of use, and wherever people are, I think I can be of use if they're willing to engage with it. And that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I know this is a question, next question you ask a lot on your podcast. If you could pick up a phone to a younger John, 20-year-old version of yourself, what would you say to him and why?
Probably two things. One, don't hesitate, mate. Just go make things happen and trust yourself. Because I think I've learned over the years to trust myself more and back myself more. And also, when I was younger, I definitely had a fear of failure. So I would stick to the things that I was good at. I wouldn't do the things that I wasn't good at because I didn't want to look like an idiot, or I didn't want to look like I'd failed, or I didn't want it to go pear-shaped. Whereas now for me, it would be about, no, just do stuff and see what happens and enjoy the journey of it. Don't worry too much about the success or the failure. And I think from a business point of view, when I started business, the one piece of advice I would give myself would be to make sure that I'm always running my business and my business isn't running me. Because I've definitely had points in my life where I've felt like my business is running me. And at those points I've gone, no, this is not what I want. So to keep an eye on that from a business point of view would have been really, really important for me. And now I think I'm at the stage where I am always running my business rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I can relate to that in somewhat, because for me, when I was growing up, my dad worked incredibly hard because he had to. And I was always brought up to be successful. You've got to work hard. And in my business, I'm very, very lucky that I don't have to put any or very, very little effort into the self-storage company, because we set it up in such a way, systems and procedures, that it doesn't need me. And I had an incredible amount of guilt attached to that business doing well without me spending too much time there. But what really drives me is the amount of time I can spend with my kids. So I was getting drawn. I felt guilt I should be in the business, even though the business didn't need me. In fact, the business runs better without me than it does with me. And I was spending my time there, but I didn't need to be there. And I wanted to spend the time with my kids, but I couldn't spend my time with my kids because I felt guilty for not. And so I had to reevaluate and reprogram myself a little bit, thinking, do you know what? It's okay not to. It's okay for your business to run without you. You don't have to be there, and I can spend time with my kids. And you don't have to necessarily work hard to make money. I'm not saying that if you're lazy and stuff, you'll make money, because you probably won't. But it was me reprogramming myself to make sure that I understood that it was okay for me not to be in the business, and I could spend time with my family.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, it's all this conditioning stuff.
Yeah.
So effectively there's a whole theory, Carl Rogers talks about this, but a whole theory around conditions of worth. And it's all this idea of when you were little, what were you kind of given worth for? What did, growing up in your family, what was kind of honoured and what wasn't? And what we've done is very quickly, we've learned how to gain love from people, and we've learned how to gain praise and attention and our sense of worth. So what happens is we take on the kind of those things from our parents. So often as kids, like, we were praised for working hard.
Yeah.
So therefore we just continue to work really hard in our adult life. And when we're not working hard, we feel like we're not of worth. We're not good enough somehow. It's not true, but it's just a kind of form of conditioning. We're often praised for being clever. So we think we've got to be clever, and we've got to, and therefore we never want to look stupid, because that's not what we were praised, so we never take any risks that are going to make us look stupid. So there's all this stuff that goes on for us. And it's just dead interesting to understand yourself better and understand those things that live within you, because only then can you really start to set yourself free from it and discover what's really right for you. So I love that, mate. I love the idea that you've been able to work through that guilt, but it often shows itself as guilt, like as if...
Guilt, perfect word.
Yeah, and that word, and the word should, it's the most dangerous word in the English language. As soon as you start thinking, well, I should be doing that, or I should be doing this, it's almost a guarantee that that's not your own voice talking. That's a voice of conditioning, of culture, of someone else. Because your true voice says more like, I want to. Like, I feel compelled to. I'm urged to. Not I should, because I should's always someone else's voice, I think.
John, I'm so glad you've got a podcast, because I think you can help and engage with so many different people that you wouldn't even know that you're helping and having a big impact on. So the fact that you've got a podcast, buddy, is really, really good, because I think the way you put things across, I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, I've got a list of notes here, just for things you've been saying and talking about. So just last question, and before I get to the quick fire round, what does success look like to you?
Oh, I flipping love that question, mate. What a brilliant coaching question that is. What does success look like to you? I absolutely love it. So for me, success is, it sounds cheesy, but it honestly is about making a difference. And whether that difference is massive or little, that's what it is. I think I would like to get to the end of my life and know that there's people who would say he made a difference or that made a difference. And I love the idea that potentially I can make a difference to people that I've never even met. There's something about that I love. So this is weird, right? But I like reading books, and for some reason I like reading books more when the author is dead. And that's not a morbid thing. It's just that I think it's so amazing that person has left this earth, and yet they're still making a difference to me. I love that. I just think, what an amazing legacy to have left, that somebody could have been dead 20 years, 100 years, and I'm reading something that they wrote that is still affecting and impacting on my life. That's amazing. So I suppose for me, success looks like making a difference, but trying to make a difference beyond just kind of me in my circles.
Yeah. Having a legacy, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've got five quick questions, one sentence answers. What does your perfect day look like, buddy?
Friends, family, communication, and probably my favourite beer.
What is your favourite beer?
Blue Moon. Oh, mate. Have you ever had Blue Moon with orange in? Oh, amazing.
I've never tried it yet. Everybody keeps talking about it.
Mate, what a beer that is. Amazing.
You almost love that as much as coaching.
Oh, mate, I do. Honestly, I get so excited. And you can barely find it on tap anywhere. So when it's on tap, oh, what a result.
Right. And what's a daily habit that contributes to your success?
Exercise, definitely. So getting out, exercising every day in some form just makes me feel more alive.
Yeah, and I've been excited to ask you this one. Recommend one book or two if you want to.
At the minute, Soul for Happy by Mo Gaudat. Mo Gaudat. Absolutely different class book. The book that changed my life was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll link both of them in the show notes. And when is your book coming out on Audible, by the way? I've heard it's coming out on Audible.
Yeah, so your mate Phil Scaife and my mate Phil Scaife, we're working with Phil on it, and his kind of these guys at Pink, we're going to try and figure out how we get this audio stuff done. Yeah, I've got 2 books out and I need to get them both done as audio books. So within the next year, mate.
Good, because I'm a massive reader. I love reading. I read 2 or 3 books every single week, and well, when I say read, I listen because I genuinely can't read. It doesn't stay in. I really struggle. I'm dyslexic, but Audible, I've listened to it on 3 times speed, 2.5 times speed, and I was absolutely devastated when Phil told me it's not out yet. I was like, bloody hell!
Sorry, mate. We'll get there. I'll do it for you, Dean.
All right, good. Cheers, mate. And what scares you?
It used to be heights. It used to be flying, but I've really worked with that. But it still is heights a bit, mate. In that sense, heights scare me. I have this. I don't know if you have this with being scared of flying, but when I'm up high, I proper have an urge to jump. I don't know why. Like, I'm not going to. Don't worry about me. I'm never going to do it. But there's something in me that just wants to level it up. Do you know? Like, I almost want to get back to the level. So it scares me sometimes when I'm really up high. But apart from that, it would be, just the idea, I suppose, of huge loss in my life would be the scariest thought.
Oh, I can relate to both of them, and yeah, I know exactly what you mean about when you're up high and stuff, and thinking about jumping off and or not think never going to do it, but I can relate to it. And in terms of airplanes, and the reason why I'm scared of flying, I think, is because I'm not in control. Somebody else is in control of my life. Because I've been trying to self-analyze myself and thinking, what the hell? Why? Logically, there's no logical reason why you should be afraid of flying whatsoever. And I think it's because I'm not in control. That's the only thing I can put it down to.
Yeah, you're probably right, mate. You're probably right.
And if I asked your 5 closest friends what your superpower is, what would they say?
I would think it's probably awareness. I think I see the world differently, maybe on a different angle. I don't want to say deeper, but I see the world in a different angle than probably most people do. And I'm unbelievably flipping curious. Some people will call it cynical, but I'm unbelievably curious.
Excellent. Well, John, thank you so much for your time, buddy. I've absolutely loved this episode. So thank you, buddy, for sharing and coming on.
Thanks, Dean. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Just one quick question. If anybody wants to find out more about you, where would they go?
So a few places, spaciouscoaching.co.uk is my business page. Facebook, you can get hold of me. We've got the John Borland podcast group on there. You can kind of join up. Obviously, you can get the podcast on all the kind of podcast platforms as well, and on Instagram as well. You can hook up with the John Borland podcast as well.
Awesome. John, thanks again, buddy. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers, Dean.